Welcome back, Outlaws. On today's adventure, we're going to be checking out the historical site of Fort Pearce with Outlaws Craig and Dave, so stay tuned. Fort Pearce is located approximately 12 miles south of St. George, Utah. The historic site is generally accessible year-round via the unpaved Warner Valley Road. The small structure at the Fort Pearce Historic Site is one of the only 3 remaining stone guard posts built during Utah's Black Hawk War. This war was actually a period of intermittent raiding between 1865 and 1870, during which the Ute tribe, led by Chief Black Hawk, also known as Antonga, and other Native American allies attempted to drive the Mormons from the Ute traditional homelands. The names Black Hawk and Antonga, by which he was known, are not Ute Indian names. Black Hawk was a name that Brigham Young, in jest, called the Ute leader. Young's term became the name by which he is now most commonly known. Mounted Ute raiding parties often joined Navajos, stole Mormon livestock, and attacked outlying ranches and settlements, and killed settlers who interfered with the raids. More than 100 Native Americans and at least 70 Mormons were killed during these raiding parties. To protect their herds and homes, local Mormon militia constructed a series of protected guard sentries and posts called forts along the major trails and travel corridors in central and southern Utah. This site, Fort Pearce, was one of those posts. In 1847, the first Mormon pioneers arrived in the territory, where indigenous peoples had lived for thousands of years. Historic tribes included the Timpanogos, Paiute, and Navajo. In 1865, Black Hawk and the Timpanogos started raiding livestock and goods of the steadily encroaching settlers. The white population dramatically increased to about 50,000 at the time, when the Timpanogos population is estimated to have been 15,000 to 20,000. Epidemics of measles and smallpox had caused many deaths among the Timpanogos, as they had no immunity to the new diseases. The rate of tuberculosis was high because of the weakened condition of the people. Mormon farming of domesticated crops and animals had altered the environment, driving off the game, which was the Timpanogos' main source of food. By 1865, hundreds of Timpanogos were starving. Backed into a corner, resources dwindling, and his people starving and sick. A young warrior becomes a leader, and so begins the story of Black Hawk. In jest, Brigham Young gave him the name Black Hawk, but to the Mexicans he was known as Antonga. He was a brilliant strategist, and Brigham Young, a sagacious religious and political leader of the Mormons. 2 powerful and unyielding men forged up by hardship of conviction, both revered and both reviled in their times, one orchestrating a remarkable campaign to turn back the tide of white expansion and prevent the extinction of his people, the other attempting to keep his exiled church and its thriving utopian society sovereign and intact. 2 men of distinct races, beliefs, and cultures, but sharing a determination to keep U.S. soldiers out of their bloody conflict for control of land and other resources in the Utah Territory. The Black Hawk War in Utah began in 1865 and ended in 1872. It was a 3-part war involving 16 tribes of the Timpanogos and allied bands of Paiute and Navajo who declared war against the Mormon settlers. For years, the U.S. government ignored requests for aid from the Mormons, as many federal leaders wanted to displace the LDS Church from its dominance of settlers in Utah. Mormon settlers fought to maintain control of what they called Zion, the traditional territory of the Ute people. Ute history notes that Black Hawk made peace with the Palefaces in 1867. He visited every white village from Cedar City to Payson to plead with the settlers to try to make peace. With his leadership, the conflict was reduced. Black Hawk died in 1870 from complications from an old war injury and after contracting tuberculosis. The Black Hawk War was not a single incident, but a series of raids and small-scale conflicts. More than 150 engagements took place over a 7-year period throughout the Utah Territory, and the conflict spilled over into Colorado, Idaho, and Wyoming. Looking down the valley, in this picture here, you can see just how strategically placed the fort was. 4 to 6 armed men with horses were stationed at each post to attack and delay the Indian raiding parties, while a rider raced to the nearest settlements with a warning. Horses were stabled at night in the guard post to ensure that early warning ride could be made without delay. Fort Pearce Wash was one of the primary routes along which Ute Navajo horsemen traveled to raid the livestock herds and settlements of St. George Basin. A site was selected in the spring of 1866 high on a bluff overlooking a narrow, steep-sided canyon just above the only natural spring for miles. This was for a guard post along Fort Pearce Wash. A small number of armed men could easily defend this location, and water from the spring would support the defenders and their stock. A work party of 20 men began construction on that guard post on December 4th, 1866. Working nearly a month to quarry enough local sandstone to construct the dry laid or mud mortar defensive structure and a stock corral. The post and the drainage were named in honor of Major John D. L. Pearce of the Iron County Militia. The dimensions of the roofless guard post were approximately 42 feet north-south by 22 feet east-west, with 7 to 8 foot high walls and one exterior doorway. The interior of the structure was divided by a partition wall into 2 rooms. Small protruding rectangular abutments were added off the northwest and southwest corners as flanking walls, and 10 vertical firing slits or gun ports were constructed near the tops of the walls. No armed conflicts are known to have taken place at Fort Pearce, but the guard post was manned, and at least intermittently from 1866 to 1873, when the peace negotiations and the U.S. Army actions ended the raiding that was known in Utah as the Black Hawk War. Once again, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button and share it, and subscribe to the channel.